Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Concord School Board Capital Facilities Meeting, today, October 12th, 2022. I will take attendance, so our committee members are all present. Bob Cotton, David Parker, Pam Walsh, and myself. Jim Richards is also here. Matt Cashman, our facilities guru, is here, and Kathleen Murphy, our superintendent, and we have some audience members. So we have, our meeting tonight is really just a sort of a report from Matt on a number of different things. We're not coming to any conclusions. We're not making suggestions to the board here. This really is a chance for us as this committee to keep up to date on all of the things that Matt is doing on a number of different areas around safety and the condition of our facilities, et cetera. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Barb.
Yeah.
So as Barb was saying, we're going to do just an overview of security and safety and some of the measures we've taken since the non-public meeting we had with the police. We're going to show some pictures. I always like to show some pictures of some of the stuff we have. We have a slide or two on RMS next steps. We want to update you with that. And then we'll get right into talking about two things, the capital improvement plan, but also summer projects and the difference when we look at long-range planning. So if you remember, back in July, it seems like yesterday, we had the non-public with the Concord Police. And in that meeting, there were several suggestions on things that we should look at doing, and I just wanted to update you. One was to install 2 exterior Knox boxes at all of the schools at separate locations. So if the police needed to get in, they could. There's a hard key and one of these card access keys in them dedicated to the school. That was one of their big requests. We did that. We also embarked on CRAZE training. If you remember, we adopted what they are trained in: avoid, deny, and defend. We had our first training on September 29th with administrators and school board members. And we're also scheduling on monthly meeting days to help get that word out to staff members as well. I was talking to Concord TV earlier tonight, and we're going to talk to the police, so it's not a surprise, but we want to, because it was about a 1-hour presentation, we're also thinking if we could televise, almost like a TV show, if you will, that would be a good way to also distribute the message to all staff members. We also, it's by law, they extended the deadline till October 15th, but back in September, we updated it, as we do yearly, our emergency operations plan. They've been distributed to all the schools, the DOE, and also Homeland Security. On that evening that we had that meeting, I also supplied Concord Police and Concord Fire with digital mapping of all of the schools, just so that they could download them, have easy access to know the locations. Along with that, we're offering to handle tours and give the police, and fire knows the building really well, but so doesn't the police. But as they get new officers on, we want to make sure they're familiar with the schools, get to know the faces, and that kind of thing. We also, in that meeting, behavioral intervention team training. Janine Richards, our director of that, she started training on the 27th, and I think there's going to be more of that to follow.
Can I make a comment about the BIT training? Because that's really important. And that will be a team across the district that will specifically monitor when some youngsters are struggling. And there'll be a team that won't necessarily work directly with the youngster, but will be able to provide the resources to support that youngster. And those issues can be around mental health, maybe some behavioral issues, classroom, that kind of thing, where we can really keep an eye on some youngsters that are struggling. So they have undergone training to how they handle it. And of course, we're very fortunate in Concord because we have such great outreach and have wraparound teams that will support the work here in the district. So I think it's a great addition to the district in monitoring and making sure our students are safe.
Can I ask a question? So who exactly is receiving this? Is it like special educators and school counselors, or is it all staff, the BIT training?
It's a team. It's not everyone.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, there'll be
so
a
we'll have
team
dedicated
representation from every school.
Okay. And who's
We're
on what- but
focused
is it
right now at
everywhere?
the middle school and the high
But
school.
it's teachers, administrators, like a
Teachers,
variety?
administrators, counselors, social workers. It's a variety,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
administrator
Yeah,
on the team.
that
So,
makes sense.
you don't want it so large that it's not manageable, but represents all of the aspects of our work in terms of student wellness.
Can I ask another question? So we have a number of different support services out there with special ed, and in teachers and guidance counselors, et cetera, et cetera. Are we looking to identify certain sort of behaviors that are the precursor to some sort of self-harm or violent?
That is exactly what it
Okay,
is.
that's what I thought.
Yeah, and it isn't necessarily youngsters who may
I
have
understand.
specific
Right, which
learning
makes sense.
issues. It's all students,
Correct.
and you know, we know from the data
Right.
and that that's the self-harm is up, and we now, as you know, they're putting the national suicide hotline on these badges that are worn by the youngsters or used by the youngsters, so they're putting those on. All those kinds of things to make sure our kids are
Because
safe.
we've learned a lot about that.
We certainly
type of
have.
behavior. Okay, thank you. I'm glad we're doing it.
And Bob?
Matt, just going back to one comment you made about recording or televising
Craze training?
the craze training.
Right.
Who's that going to be available to? I just want to
Right.
make sure that it's
I didn't want to
appropriately
get too far ahead of
available.
myself. It's something we've talked about. You can YouTube search and you could find everything there is to know about craze training.
Okay.
We just feel it's important to not only all of us understand it, and we saw that training, but also get it out to the faculty and the staff and students so that they know the approach. It's to calm the nerves and understand how to react in an event like that.
Okay, so there's nothing particularly proprietary about it.
There isn't. No, it's similar. There's other trainings
Okay.
out there called Alice training.
Right.
Yeah.
Very similar.
trained.
So it's I want to say it's almost a trade name. There's nothing proprietary about it. And
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just was wondering if the superintendent could expand on the process for identifying students that this BITS team will be supporting, and how you plan to go around parental involvement and parental notification in that.
Oh, absolutely. Those are great questions. Thanks. It will be a referral from the schools, from guidance counselors, school psychologists, administrators, teachers, and it, you know, there won't be just one issue. There will be a pattern of behaviors that would rise to it. Now, there could be a single incident too, so I want to be careful there. But normally, it would be a pattern of behaviors that that folks are seeing that would cause additional concern and rise above perhaps just the traditional kinds of, typical kinds of support we have, but rise to a higher level. And certainly the most important participant is the parents involved in this.
Yeah.
They will clearly know that, you know, this work is being done, and be in communication with those folks that would
Great.
be on the team as well as with the schools. But in 99 and 9/10 of the cases, the parents are going to know anyway, just because there's
It
a
involves an
pattern.
incident, right.
Right, and so this just brings it to another level to those kids that, as Dave described, you know, injuries to others or to themselves.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cashman, please
Sure.
carry on.
so additionally, some other stuff we do, each school holds monthly safety meetings, and we also conduct the required drills. So there's 10 drills, 6 evacuation, fire, and 4 any all hazards. One of those 4 has to be a tabletop, and we'll get to that in a second. We're scheduling those out too with Homeland Security at all the schools. today we completed our 4th of 7 of the self-assessments of the schools. So Homeland Security comes in, police and fire. We meet with the administrative staff at the schools. And we just, with their expertise and help, we evaluate all the schools, and then they send off a report later on that. We're also working with staff to complete the NIMS training, the 100, 200, and 700 level. It's once you take it, it gives you the familiarity with the nomenclature around NIMS and National Incident Management with FEMA. We, little bit separate but safety related, we purchased last week, Jack Dunn and Superintendent Murphy, we got more AEDs and we've installed them at all the schools. So they readily available in significant locations. We also received a SAFE grant for the Rundlett Middle School. We had applied for all the schools, and the one that we heard we got accepted on was for Rundlett, so we'll be looking to add cameras, interior and exterior, in addition to what we have over there. We're also looking and talking amongst the safety meeting, meetings that we have to enhance more safety in the schools and helping with notification systems, alerting systems. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the long-range planning and some of the things we talk about. And again, I mentioned the tabletop exercises, so we're starting to schedule them with Homeland Security at the schools.
Matt,
Yes.
just to clarify on the SAFE grant, those cameras can be moved to the new school
They can.
eventually?
They're identical to what we have now. They're compatible. They all feed into the same system.
Right.
So
Just for clarification, AED stands for?
Automatic
External
defibrillator.
Yeah, it's a defibrillator.
Oh, okay.
Keeps your heart going, man.
yeah, we have one here.
If I only had a heart.
We have one here.
Yeah, a brain, the nerve.
So Matt,
So,
following on that, just a key thing with AEDs is that, batteries remain charged and they're maintained in good shape, so we have them when we need them. Is there an established maintenance program
There-
for all of the schools? And
yes.
does all the,
Yes,
I don't
part
know
of
who
the
does it at
service.
each school, but. is
No,
it
we have an outside service that
Okay.
checks these. There's a little button, little lock on the top, and it actually, if that door is opened, audible alarm goes off to notify that, hey, someone's in there and not to mess with it. So
That's good.
we had received questions of how can we turn that off, and we said, no, it's there for a reason. So.
Did we get turned down for the grants of the other schools, or we haven't heard yet?
We haven't heard yet on the second round. The first round we did.
Okay.
I believe it's a couple of weeks. So our friends at Homeland Security, they're in these meetings with us. So there's not a meeting that has gone by in the 4 that we've had that we haven't reminded them, hey, don't forget about us.
So, of course, I was curious as to why we didn't get our other grants. And so we were able to get a hold of the list and who got the grants and all the other communities. And what we noticed was that things that are already in Concord, all of the cameras, all of your systems for the doors and how you get into doors with the keys, and we have those. Those are standard practice for Concord. When we looked at the list of all the other school districts, that's what they were purchasing with the money. So their level of need
It's way greater.
was greater than ours.
Yeah.
And I believe when we got the cameras, which is a lot of the other schools didn't have, and they got cameras, but nothing greater than the things that we were asking for. I happened to see the assistant director of the security of Homeland Security, Eddie Edwards, and I talked to him about it. And I expressed that it was discouraging for us because we want to move forward, so we don't want to wait. So I kind of let him know how we felt about it. We were pleased that we got the grant for $32,000 for cameras at Rundlett, but we'll be looking for that second round to do the other grants. It was interesting how they did it.
Can I ask another AED question? Do we have training? Do people know how to use those? And I know they're pretty simple, because I know I've had the training to use them, but
Okay.
they come up with newer ones that talk you through things. One of the key things is, you sort of need to know how to use it. You shouldn't be touching the person at all.
Right.
Or else you're gonna get the shock too. We may end up with 2 people with injuries. And
Let
that
me,
would not be good, so.
On my ride home tonight, I'll call Laura Anderson, who's our nurse, and I'll verify, because I don't want to just answer off the cuff and not give you an accurate. Unless you
I just
know.
want
Yeah.
to know, is there a team of individuals, different individuals, are they completely automatic, so that all you do is you just lay it on the right spot and
Tells you
just
what to
stand
do.
away, flip the switch and stand away? I know that
Yeah.
they're getting better and
I,
better.
I know when I taught at Concord High, we had staff trainings, so staff would be split up into groups, like I was in the science group because I taught health, and we had training, and Steve Mello actually facilitated it way back in the day and took us all through it. But they're the way they are is you open it up and it says, open the box, do this, like it
Right.
walks you through it so that it's not like you don't need to be familiar with it, but it isn't something that you don't practice it or anything. You just get taken through it. It's really, really pretty basic. But we did get review of it and a lot of protocol around, what if it's a young lady who's, you can't rip her shirt off, she's a young lady, how do we work around these kinds of things? And there's a lot of particular training that is pretty specific around that. And that, not that, your life is more important than a lot of things, but you want to make sure you're not, doing those sorts of things inappropriately. So I remember, because we all asked a million questions. AEDs were a bit newer back then, I'm old now. But it would be a good thing to double check with our nurses, I
I will
think.
definitely double check and let you know.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, we'll go left to right, but there's the Knox box. It's an example of the ones we put on in the schools for the police department. The middle picture, there's a couple of things in this picture I just want to point out that some people might not readily notice. The circled area, there's obviously an exterior door camera. The doors are all numbered in a certain sequence for all of our school buildings. And then if you look at the middle picture on the right-hand side, you have the card entry and then the buzzer in system. So a visitor comes up, as you probably all have done, to, go to a school and you press a button, audible and visual, the person at the desk can release you to
So
come
does
in.
Rundlett have a camera? Is that how they do it now?
They do, yep.
Because that was often
That we
It's a
have
tricky
had some
entrance.
issues with that. And then to Jim, to your point, there's a example of an AED at Beaver Meadow School. So if we could, I wanted to switch topics for a minute. We wanted to just talk about the middle school project and some key timeframes. You're familiar with the other timeline that we had shown you. I just want to walk through this one briefly with you, show you a visual. DOE visited us on September 22nd, so just a couple of weeks ago, and we were the 17 applications in the state to be ranked. And I don't think it was 17 different districts, but 17 different building projects going for building aid. So they visited us, and we should know something from the DOE, and it would be very preliminary, where our ranking is by mid to late October. But it doesn't stop there. It goes to the school building authority at the Department of Education, and they're going to release their numbers by December 31st of the end of this year. From there, then it goes to the legislative floor. They make a decision on it, and it still doesn't end there. It goes in front of the governor, and if it gets signed into the governor's budget, then hopefully we would have building aid. The regulations around that is you have a time frame between July 1 of 23 and June 30th of 24 to get a shovel in the ground. So some middle stuff that I didn't review yet would be looking to come to you with RFQ, request for qualifications for both a architect selection and also a construction firm with a construction management approach. So those things are coming up. I represented it a little bit, same information, but a little bit different of a graph, a little more of a micro view than the other ones that we've shown. just showing the next couple of years certain milestones. I would say that just to be cognizant of the schematic design through construction design, there's 5 layers of design that goes into a project. You know, we had talked at a previous meeting, we would look to bring an architect on and then soon after a construction management firm to help a company. No decisions are for tonight, but we're just trying to lay out a process because there's a lot going on here in the
Well, we have
future.
2 things going on. This was one of my questions to you on the phone today. We were unsure of where this building might exist, and none of those unanswered questions affect or impede our ability to apply for financial building aid. So we follow along on all the steps as if we have the project already perfect in our heads, even though we don't. And then the deadline for shovel in the ground, by that time, obviously, we're going to know where we're digging and what the building will look like. So I know sometimes people say, well, if you're already making these plans, you must know where the school's going to be. No, we just have to apply for the money now.
Right,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah.
I think it's important to note that the Commissioner of Education did not put money in his proposed budget for new building aid programs. So
What a surprise.
Yeah, he's such a
there
fan
is
of his-
money for charter school building aid for leases, however.
What a tool.
Just a response to that, quite discouraging to hear that. But certainly our legislators have control over that.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be critical that we reach out to our legislative delegation to let them know that that's really important to us in Concord. With the notion, too, that there's no set amount, although they've had a traditional amount of money that they've done. There's no reason why, with the coffers right now, with lots of additional monies in the coffers at the state, that we couldn't increase that amount of money that's eligible for building aid, and I think we should do it.
One of the most profound experiences I've had as a board member is how much of our work is like developing film before digital camera existed, where you're in the pitch black and your hands are in a black bag and you're taking film out and doing all this stuff, but you can't see any of it because I feel sometimes like all these things that our decisions hinge upon, we don't know until forever. So, all right, Matt, carry on. Oh,
Just one
Yep,
more
go.
question, Matt. Just looking at the timeline again. Where do we stand, or when do we start trying to develop the request for proposals or the RFP?
So we're actually working on those now. We hope to bring them forward to you for review, I'd say within the next month.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important that we.
Because there's a
take
phase
look
to
at those.
that. There's a selection and there's a whole process to that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Matt, have we, has Centerpoint completed its vote yet? Have we received an update from them?
I don't have any update on,
Okay.
other than I did hear loosely that they might have taken an initial vote and then they have another vote next week or next weekend. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah,
I think
Matt,
it's this
that's-
coming weekend.
Yeah, on Sunday, I think was the second meeting of the congregation to make some decisions. So we'll know, hopefully, by the end of the day on Sunday.
all right.
All right, before we move on, any other questions with middle school at this moment? All right, so next, I just wanted to talk, we do this at budget time every year. We have a long-range plan, a capital improvement plan. We also have in our budget, we have summer projects. You can tell I'm a big picture guy. I like to just show pictures to paint the story a little bit better. But what I did is I'm just going to review these, and then we're going to talk through the process of our capital improvement plan. This is a typical roof, EPDM. It's a rubber membrane roof. You can see a seam that is old or outdated. You know, you can usually get 25 years out of that type of roof system. When you start seeing signs like this, you start getting leaks in the building and that sort of thing. The middle picture was an actual HVAC unit at broken ground that over the winter, one of the tubes ruptured. We had flooding in one of the classrooms. But sometimes those things are unpredictable. You can see pictures, that's another line set to a HVAC system with some heavy corrosion. We also, stormwater failures, you can see that how they start to develop in parking lots. That's a common picture from last year, the middle one, where the infrastructure is 1957 vintage at Rundlett. And so oftentimes we have to get that cleared out. Also unforeseen, unpredicted, but there's a picture of a new boiler when we had one of the two boilers fail. It's not a good thing to happen during winter, and that's a picture of the new one going in. This is slow with the pictures. Just again, we're just talking about routine emergency fixes that happen within the normal budget cycle during the course of a year, but then stuff that could be planned out. So it just, again, maybe I'm overkill on the pictures, but that was a motor replacement we had over the winter time, so that was an emergency repair. We had to get that installed quickly at the high school over the winter. Also over the winter, on the right-hand side was a picture of a unit ventilator that had some obvious corrosion to it, but it was encapsulated with asbestos. So it wasn't as easy as just have a plumber go up there. We had to abate it.
That looks like a bad piece of modern art right there.
It sure does. But again, I just want to show you that the facilities from a planning standpoint and an emergency, and when you look at deferred maintenance that happens over time, oftentimes you can't put a whole new roof system on your existing budget if you haven't planned to do it. So I just wanted to almost make this more of a work session in a way and just kind of talk through, this is what we're looking at. Typical capital improvements, summer project type stuff we do throughout the district. We try to do in the summertime, painting, interior, exterior. We want to look at this year some improvement in the hardscapes, be on a consistent schedule with playground mulch and outside mulch for the outside of the schools. Parking lot striping, believe it or not, you have to do that on a fairly regular basis every 8 to 10 years. Mechanical motor replacements, upkeep, furniture upgrades. Superintendent and I were talking today. It's one thing to try to get a whole classroom full of desks. It's another thing to plan and bond for a whole wing or a whole school. So those are the kinds of things when you look at the high school and you look at some of the older schools. Some of that furniture is original to when we opened, and so we want to just talk about those things, and we'll look at them when we show the plan. Also, along with that, and we do it every year, but we'll hit bits and pieces at schools for flooring replacements, tile, carpet, rubber, gym floor refinishing. Just something that's always there that we have to plan for. On the other side of the coin, the thing that I do want to talk to you about, and we're going to look at, are the higher level goals. The physical plant safety is an example. Maybe we want to look at enunciation upgrades, glass film, door hardware, hardening some of the schools with a vestibule style entrance, similar to the 3 newer elementary schools. These are just ideas to talk about.
Matt, what is enunciation?
We use that term when we're talking about broadcasting, speakers.
Oh, okay. That's what I just
outside.
thought that might be what I just
It might
wanted
be
to
my
make sure.
own little term that I might, yeah. So one of the other things, and Pam, you were in our meeting yesterday, long-term, we want to look at, I like to call it a campus renewal program, where we take a look at our existing schools. When we do the middle school, we want to try to achieve net zero, but what about the other schools? So we want to take a look at what can we do from a sustainability standpoint, from solar, wind, lighting, water harvesting, and just we want to be considering that. One of the main things that we look at for all of our buildings is a weather-tight shell. So you talk about roofs, windows, doors, exterior doors. Believe it or not, all of those components to an exterior shell, just like your house, they have a timeline to them. And so with the use that we get, we want to be planning those. Mechanical HVAC conversions and complete replacements, we're talking about that with broken ground, but we also want to be looking at the high school and Beaver Meadow down the road. On a higher level, it would be good to look at, instead of doing a couple of one-offs of classroom replenishments, go right in and look at flooring, furniture, painting, and really do significant upgrades. I think we saw from what we did with the Access program over the summer, that's a humongous improvement. And, it's very, very, well seen and well used. And I think it's just something we want to be considering as a board to talk about. And naturally, site work and infrastructure, storm water drainage, parking lots have a life to them, accessibility, playgrounds, and hardscapes. Before I get to my spreadsheet, does anyone have any questions on that at all?
So just a comment, Matt. And you and I have talked about this before, but I think for a long time we've been doing a lot of deferred maintenance.
Yes.
And as part of our strategic plan, I think increasingly we've got to start doing preventive maintenance and get away from deferred maintenance, or we're going to keep on having a lot more of your pictures up on the wall.
No, you're right.
And it ends up costing more oftentimes to do that than it does to try to take care of the problem when it's still relatively small. So we just got to keep on thinking about that.
You're 100% right. I mean, if you look over the years, we've contracted with outside HVAC contractors. They were here just tonight before you guys came in. We've got some catch up to do. It's a big district, but you are right that focus needs to be there. So when we look at the budget, we need to be looking at, and we'll show you numbers in there where we're building in more than previous years because we've had that issue. I am trying to get my display to work to show the very small print.
Yeah. It's so cute, you think I can read that.
As I'm doing this, let's see. Tried this a few times today. So I can pull it up on my computer. I'm trying to get it on my computer screen. Anyone?
Did
So
you
it's-
hit the link? Did you hit your
I
link?
did, yeah. I have it on my,
And it won't show up on the screen.
hold on, it's, all right.
The capital improvement plan is,
Yep. So I embedded the link to the spreadsheet.
I don't understand why it doesn't go.
I don't either. I'm going to try one more thing.
Can you copy and paste, maybe?
You
Well,
all have it in the packet. in
What I
front of you,
did
so-
do is
Yeah.
a backup.
We do have it in the packet.
Yeah.
All right. I apologize for that. So it is very small. However, maybe we can make good use of what we have. So what I've done, and again, this is a draft. There's nothing set in stone here. This is a working copy. I've tried to take those big picture items, the windows, exterior doors, site work. I want to roll in there security as well. If you go through here, what we're trying to do is look at lifespans for those particular aspects of the building and try to, farm them out over the years for when there might be failures to those, or, if something came up sooner than that. So I don't know if you want to roll through here. I mean, you can take a look and see what we're trying to do.
So this is just sort of you're like, okay, I need to sit down and put something together that we can begin to
This
work on.
is-
This is like your
yeah.
first thing.
Yeah, because,
I just feel as a committee, it would be good for us to look at it
yeah,
and look at it
I think
in
so.
bigger print. And maybe dedicate a meeting to really looking at it and
I think so
analyzing.
too. And I think we're in the right time frame too, because we've got the budget
Right.
start process that's going to be starting.
Right.
And again, to Bob's point, year after year, there naturally has been deferred maintenance because the monies that we typically would use in a summer project go to other
Right,
aspects
right.
of the.
No,
so-
it's oftentimes putting a Band-Aid on something again and again and again.
Yeah,
And,
it catches up.
Yep, yep. My thoughts are, this is a lot of information, not easy to read necessarily.
Right.
And if this is, this isn't something that we now have to agree upon, we need to really discuss it.
I wouldn't mind.
You can't
well,
get it up on, could you have it separate outside of the link, Matt? You must have it in your folder. Can you
Yeah.
at least put it up? I just thought it would be important to take a few minutes.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
highlight some,
Yeah.
why, when you look at, if it's in front of you, if you look at Abbott Downing, while Matt's doing that, you look at Abbott Downing, you'll see Abbott Downing is one of your newer schools.
Yeah.
Well, by newer, I mean somewhere around 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So when I say newer,
2013.
I'm saying that carefully, but there's not a lot of big items in here like windows and doors. Those are all fine. Obviously, walking in the building, we want to redesign those common areas when you walk in the building.
Yeah.
But you'll see that in your
Yeah,
newer
so
buildings. But
that
if
total
you
is
go
quite
down-
small.
There we go.
Oh,
But-
he's got
there
it.
we go.
Good, he's got
But
it.
on the other hand, if you look at Beaver Meadow School in
Exactly.
2025.
Right.
And Broken Ground,
$7
4
million.
million, yeah.
And so can we just
Concord High
if we
School.
just go through and highlight some of the things, I agree with you, take it, study it.
Yeah.
Matt and I talked about it several times now.
We have.
We want your input. What
Right.
do you see as board members that we missed or you think is, we need, we can't do that? Maybe it's, we can't do that. Or, we'd like to add some things to it. This is a
Right.
conversation.
Yeah, and the other piece of this conversation, which is again and again and again, is what's noticeable sometimes to the public and to the taxpayers specifically is I'm paying all this money in taxes. And so they look at a fancy new building as a waste of money. And when I say they, it's people that speak up this way, not everybody. So when we're looking at these numbers, at the same time, we're looking at curriculum and staffing and all the other things that cost money. So it's always one of these balances. So what I would ask, as we go along, even board members as well, like right now, let's just put all that aside and look at what needs to be done. I lost my seat voting for a new furnace when Concord Steam closed instead of full-day kindergarten because it was the right thing to do. And I stand by that decision. We had it a year later. We have our kindergartners in school all day. Cost me my board seat. I don't regret that. It's just another aspect of what goes into all of this. And so I look at these numbers and I'm like, oh, we kind of joke today, these will make great headlines. But
Right.
it's a beginning conversation, and we just have to, sometimes you strike the balance with where the big money goes year to year. But we have to just remember, we straddle both sides of that fence.
We do. I appreciate you calling it out that way. You're right.
Well, we have to initially look at it that way. We can't look at the number and let that dictate it. We have to look at what needs to be done.
Right.
And then how can we do that most economically sound and efficient and that sort of thing.
That's right. That's right. So, I mean, we could look at it this way. If you look at Abbott Downing, 2012, that's when we built the school and commissioned it. So windows, although we keep it on there, we don't, in the next 10 years, we shouldn't have to even worry about anything with that. Exterior doors, interior doors. There are some site work things at even the new schools that are showing, Krista McCullough, for example, very wet site.
It's on Spring Street for a reason.
It is on Spring Street for a reason. A new school, so one
And the
would think.
river going downhill.
And we have that river going downhill. So we know that we need to do something. That can't continue like that. So we're putting monies in for consideration for design and then something into the budget to try to remedy that and make that better.
Just one more comment, though. There will be opportunities for us to look at grant money.
No,
So
that, no,
remember,
right.
we have security in there. You can see it, the PA
Right.
lights,
Well,
the blue
that's-
lights,
yes,
and the
yeah.
annunciation. We asked for some of those things in the second round of that
Right.
safety grant.
Well,
So
yes.
maybe these things will come up.
But that's
because-
my point about not looking at the number as a deciding factor. Once we decide it needs to be
That's
done, we
right.
look at how to do it
That's
as
right.
cheaply as,
Okay,
not cheap,
great.
and as inexpensively
I
as
just want you
possible.
to know that we're not totally looking at the taxpayer with these kinds of things.
No, no,
but We'll
no,
seek grants out.
absolutely, right.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So
Yeah, okay.
So take, one of the three, I can't say new elementary schools now, but in relative terms, newer elementary schools compared to somewhere like Broken Ground. we're planning on a complete replacements of all 11 air handlers on there and upgrade them to dehumidified air. We're looking at using ESSER funds, and we're going to be talking about that. But those are kinds of examples where we wouldn't be doing that at the newer schools, but these existing units have outlived their lifespan, even with all the types of maintenance and repairs and everything that we've done. You know, windows too. The school building is 1973, so a lot of those are single pane, older windows. You know, if you get 40, 50 years out of windows, you start to see them fail. Those are kinds of things that we want to be talking about as a committee, protecting your investment, keeping a weather-tight shell. Exterior doors, they have a shelf life. The interior doors, you know, there's newer locking mechanisms, you know, known as Columbine locking style doors where they lock from the inside. That's a new and improved from the old reaching around to the outside of the door, locking it in the case of a lockdown. You know, those types of things, site work. You know, you get a certain amount of lifespan on parking lots or storm drainage. Even if you don't have issues, you know, you look to upgrade, repave, and replace. Some schools don't have a generator. You know, Broken Ground would want to look at generator price, you know, and look at that down the road. I would want to throw this caveat out there too. None of these are formal, active estimates. So this is industry, our best guess in talking to other contractors. So you'll see some numbers here and want to pull your hair out. If we decided as a committee this is the direction we want to go, then obviously we'd go out for bid and we'd evaluate pricing and
Look
that
for
sort of
grants
thing.
again, all that kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
So this report, it lists out all of our properties. It talks a little bit about, you know, when they were built, how many acres, what type of boilers, when they were converted over. But I just want to call your attention to the 4 older schools, and we have Rundlett on here as well. Those in the high school, those are schools that are going to be around for several more years. So when we look at sustainability, like we talked about earlier, or we look at HVAC replacement, or roofs. You know, just recently in the last 3 years, we put on new roofs at the high school and at Broken Ground. Those are the kinds of things that you don't normally fund in a typical summer project
Yeah, like
account.
let's
It's
just do a new
too
roof this summer.
large,
Yeah,
and
no.
it's,
And
you know,
central office.
and
Yeah.
central office, right? A summer ago.
Right.
One thing I just want to mention is I appreciate that you're planning 10 years out. I think that's at least appropriate. And, you know, some of those things are obviously just space holders and markers, but nevertheless, it's good to be thinking ahead.
Yeah, I thank you. I agree. I think you look at your major components to a building, and you look at the age, and then you look at all the repair costs, and you know, there comes a time where you have to replace a boiler in your house, and you have to do it in your schools. So again, I'm happy to answer questions. I'll keep rolling through. You know, if anyone sees anything, I did. You know, you're going to see a big number. Obviously, we used the number that we had from the architects for Rundlett Middle School. We don't think it would come anywhere near that, but we have to put that in there, and we put that under the year 2024 if we were going to. But we also have to include, which is going to inflate that bottom line number on this report to a very big number, because we're looking at that. But if we don't do that, then there's necessary things we have to do.
Right.
And the roof is absolutely probably number one. But our site work and our conditions of our infrastructure, we're going to need to do something there.
Right, so you have, all of it's included in that number.
So it is. And
Yeah.
again, this is meant to be more of a working document that we work together on. We balance our strategic plan and our goals with this. as well as necessity items that we need to be thinking about.
Just a quick question on that Rundlett
Sure.
line there. The bus lane reconfiguration, is that part of the potential new school, or what are we talking
Well,
about?
wherever we build, that would have to be redesigned and redeveloped. I mean, we see a lot of traffic, and it's been
Oh, yeah.
traditional. We have
It's bad.
about 11 buses and 2 rounds going to that school. There's got to be a better way. There's a lot more research that would have to be done, but obviously, if we stayed there and we didn't do a building project for a while, I think we'd really need to look at, if we're going to be replacing the infrastructure, we should be looking at, when we rip all the pavement up, we should be looking at a different design that makes
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
better than it is right now.
Okay, thanks.
But just building on Bob's question, if we go forward with this new middle school on the existing site, that 2.5 million bus lane reconfiguration is built into the 170.
No.
No?
That's not.
Not
that
built
wasn't
into
in
the
the
site
prep
work?
No, there's a lot of, those numbers
Yeah,
are
okay.
still pretty fuzzy.
Yeah.
So no, we'd have to add that to the existing site, because as Matt said, that's gonna have to be done if we don't build anything, or if we choose
Right.
that site.
Right.
Matt, I have a question though on the same sort of thing. If we don't build a new school, and first of all, I don't want this to sound like I'm criticizing your work, because I think this is a great start. But if we don't build a new school and we stay with our existing school there, you still have a lot of filling out here to do, because
We definitely
there's
do.
nothing on windows, and we would have to replace virtually all the windows.
We would.
So this is not a complete list, this
And-
is just your first start.
This is, it's a first start off of a document that we've built upon over the time that I've been here. And there was one like this before I got here. But you are right. And I knew coming into tonight's meeting, we'd have a discussion about it. But 100%, we have some windows that are original to 1957 in the
Or
back of
You
that
can actually
school.
put your finger through cracks in those windows on some of them.
Yes, you can.
And then
So-
likewise, we would have to have, people ask us this question often, and I don't want this to be out there and have people say, well, we should just stay with our existing building, because look how inexpensive it is. You don't
Right.
have the HVAC system on here that would have, if we stayed in the
I don't.
existing building, that we'd have to go with. You do not have the electrical upgrades on here that we would
Nope.
have to if we had to stay in the original building.
Right.
Yeah, there is
I don't want that
more
to be.
work to be done depending on what path we take.
There definitely is. They would have to be, if we're moving ahead and we're building a school, when is that start date? What are the absolute necessities that have to happen? What do we have to do, and what could extend us for a couple of years till we build?
Right,
So
to our
you're-
existing building. We wouldn't, if we were building a new site, I
We're not
wouldn't be
gonna
pushing
put-
for rewiring the existing site at all. But if we, the community has asked us a lot about, well, just stay in your existing building and fix it.
Fix it up. yeah.
Fix it up,
Right.
and there would be tremendous amounts of
There-
fix it up
Huge.
money. that
This
would be-
doesn't
It would
represent-
actually,
This- yeah.
it actually, in my
It'd be
opinion, from what I
bigger
think,
than
would be
the-
higher than the 176.
Well, again,
is what I
if
think
you-
they've told us, yes, so.
Jim, you were on the board. I think if you dig back several years when we did the work with the architects and they did the renovation cost and the build out new, they came in, pretty close.
To fix it up, we'd have to almost be like,
Be
I
al-
think 5% over what we would do to build new.
Exactly.
If I remember correctly.
So,
yeah.
so again, I'm glad you called that out. I'm not meaning for this document to be, this is not etched in stone. This is a working document for us to talk about, consider. There's a big decision. There's a lot of things that are going to happen in the future with the timeline that we looked at. Just want to start this conversation with folks, because there are definitely some things we got to do over there if we're going to remain there for a while.
I'm not sure the appropriate body for this, whether it's this committee or the finance committee or a combination, but I think before we put $2.1 million, even if it's over 7 years into Eastman School, we need to have a conversation about whether we should retain that property.
Right, that's
I
a
agree.
conversation in of itself, I
What
agree.
the revenue is that we're bringing in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Sure.
anticipated my next question too. I was gonna say, when do we talk about Eastern School?
And
But
that's
you hit it
because-
right on.
Right.
This forces you to have that conversation.
Yes, no,
Right.
this is good.
Because
We
2.1
do need
million on that
I feel like
building.
we need a meeting that's just this, nothing else.
I would say you'd need a work meeting.
Yep.
Just
I mean,
to-
probably more than one, but to really solidify it, and,
It's good to have a lot of different eyes on it.
yeah, very
And-
much so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But even central office, Matt's
Yeah.
done a lot of work here. I mean, just think about outside, and there wasn't even pavement, there weren't lights, and so, this is a public building with
Yeah.
public access. Matt and I have been talking, he's added it. I can't hire anybody with a disability if they have to work upstairs, because there's only stairs, there's no elevator here. So if they're working on the third floor up in my office or in that area with curriculum, you can't get up there. So that's something we have to think about. Now, we have access for the public because we use this floor. The rest of the offices down here are all technology, so, I mean, those are things you have to have those discussions about. And, we didn't do this, we did this on purpose, so
Yeah,
that
right,
we would
no,
have
yeah,
these
right,
discussions,
no, it makes good
right?
sense.
I know that we asked you to gather some information, but I think athletic facilities would need to eventually be part
Yes.
of this conversation. And I don't know when you think you'll have the data that we asked you for.
So, we had a meeting in the city today, and we had a range of topics, and that was one of the topics that came up. We don't have any conclusion on that by any means, but both parties are talking about it and looking at it, so.
Okay, but we had asked, I think, for some specific data about usage of various facilities between
Right.
us, the city.
Wouldn't that come from Steve? A lot of that would come from Steve Mello
Yeah, we don't have
and
it
Scotty
centralized.
Owen, because they're
Yeah,
the,
and use of facilities, like we use, all the schools, they use the gymnasium for basketball in the winter,
Right.
they use
Right.
field space for lacrosse and various athletics, baseball, so soccer. And
Yeah.
that's recreation citywide, so
Yeah.
not just our schools.
And that's a very good point that Pam brings up, is that there's a few things that aren't on here, and athletic fields are one. How much do we contribute to other buildings, whether it's a transportation-related item, a building that we contribute to, even if we don't directly own it, but that we know we're going to have charges or expenditures that we're
Like,
gonna
where do we have to rent
plan
space?
for. Right, or where we have to rent space and stuff, and so that we start to get like that, I think Bob's right, that 10-year line of where you're starting to look at this and say, you know what? We share this bus barn with the city or
Right.
whatever, and it's gonna need a new roof, or we share the
I see.
Memorial Field, and they're gonna need new lights, and we're not necessarily the owners, but as
Tenants.
co-users or tenants, we have to plan for a big expense.
We've always
I think we
contributed
should
to the
add that.
track.
I think that's a very
Yeah.
appropriate
Yeah.
thing to be.
We just had something
Yeah.
come up, come up this past year with the buses. I can't
Right.
remember exactly what it was.
Well, they
Oil
wanna
tank
replace
replacement.
the gasoline tanks,
Yeah,
right?
gas
And
one.
there was a contribution, there's also, I just remind you that we've been talking about 3 electric buses.
The electric buses.
And so with that is going to come some work that we're gonna need, because the buses need to be on a concrete pad, and of course, we'll have to put in charging stations. So there's some
Right.
work that we're doing, Jack's talking with the city folks over
Yeah.
there now
Right.
around those issues,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I've got those things down, because
think-
you're right, they need to be
I
added.
think they should be in here. I think not
Yeah.
only for our budgeting purposes, but to provide your staff heads up for going after grants and other
Right,
people's
right.
money, which sometimes is a long lead item. Well,
Right.
oftentimes takes longer than just
Right.
1 year.
Right.
Right.
And also.
And I know, Matt, that you were working on this, and I think it should be part of this plan, although given payback periods, I think
Okay.
we should look at energy improvements in a sort of a different way, but that they should still be part of, and I know
Sure.
you're beginning work on a lot of those efforts.
I
so.
am. We've converted all the schools except for the high school, and we did convert here to LEDs, and so they had about an average of a 3.1 payback. But we do want to go deeper now and start looking at solar, wind, all sorts of different energy savings, and so. glad you said
It's
that.
too bad you didn't have a lot to do, Matt. You must be so bored most of the time.
Yeah,
Oh, he's very good, yeah.
yeah.
Especially when you get those calls at
Yeah.
11 o'clock at night.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
on a weekend or on a Sunday,
weekends.
Sunday morning. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, those things also always happen on weekends or overnight.
They do.
too, so
Of course.
it's
Super Bowl
really good.
Sunday, something like that.
Yeah, Super Bowl Sunday.
So, you know,
Right.
are there any other questions? I don't know how much deeper tonight you want to go, but I do think it would be good to have several working sessions.
Yeah.
I know that the strategic plan, Bob, you've been involved in that, and we've done a lot of work around that,
It might make
merges a
sense
lot
to
of-
look at, to divide the work up in terms of when I'm thinking about meeting to discuss these things. So we have a
Yeah.
meeting and we look at the elementary schools. We have a meeting and we look at the middle school and the high school.
Sure.
We have a meeting and we look at buildings like the bus place and the athletic field, so that we can spend 90 minutes really focusing on that particular thing.
Right.
And then, once we sort of work through it separately, we can look at it as a whole and bite our fingernails off and such.
It would be good to have year by year totals as well as some, just to, as we think about bonding
Yeah.
Okay.
requirements and things like that.
Yeah.
And I guess the other, whether it's a budgetary line item every year, or whether it's part of a capital plan, sort of the replacement costs of furniture and
Okay.
equipment and things like that, would be good to have, some if those are things that are gonna be big periodic expenses, or if they're gonna be a rotational schedule.
Sure. Okay.
You know, it's funny when you try to do a rotational schedule, which I agree,
Yeah.
because it helps soften
Yeah.
it. Like, it's like this plant, 10 years, right? But when you're doing things like furniture, you do 7 or 8 years of furniture, and all of a sudden the furniture's changed and it's new furniture.
And now you gotta start over anyway.
Yeah.
It's like painting a house. If
Yeah.
you do one side,
I mean,
you're
the
always painting your
elementary-
house.
It's amazing. The elementary principals talked to me this week about furniture, and one of the things is the different kinds of furniture. No longer the desk and chair. It's very different in that stand-up desks. There's a lot of kids that do much better standing, and so you have higher level desks. There's some kids that do well on some of those soft they're bouncy.
Wiggle
Yeah.
stools.
Yeah.
Wiggle
Tea
stools.
stools
Thank
and
you.
wiggle stools, yeah.
But I've been in classrooms and you see them, and they're fine. They're doing their work, but they're
The
moving.
vestibular stimulation.
They're moving. And
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
We ought to
principals-
consider that for the school board.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say,
Then we wouldn't fall asleep. We'd be all interested.
I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe we'll talk about that expenditure.
That would be great for a meeting when the.
Bouncy balls.
Josh is trying to keep track of us. We're sitting here like this.
But when you're
No,
when
you're
you're
right.
dealing with little
Yeah.
kids who have lots of
Yeah.
energy in the elementary schools, they're finding, and the research is Dave.
We're
I think
using
you-
them
Dave's
for-
shaking
we
his
use them
head.
for
He
years,
knows
yeah, for
exactly
sure.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The research is clear about
Yeah.
that with the kids.
Yeah.
So
Superintendent, are you implying that we don't have lots of energy on the school board?
no, you do. It's
No, he's
incredible.
Anyway.
Great point.
I agree.
Well,
you know, we
meeting the
wanna
sensory
do that.
needs of the kids, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've learned a lot, so how we not only, how we have them at rest, but also how we move them.
Yeah.
And how frequently we move them.
Right.
So that does impact facilities and equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Not too much information tonight, Matt.
no, just an overview.
No, it's good. I like meetings where we can just take things in and we don't have to, under pressure, make a big decision. And
But
we
I
have a lot
heard
to
like
look at.
addition around
Great job,
athletic
though, Matt.
fields. I heard, so Matt
Yeah.
and I will do this.
Right.
Addition on athletic fields, looking at the bus barn, Memorial Field, year by year totals,
And shared buildings.
And
Oh, that's
that's
the
the
bus barn. That's
shared
right.
buildings.
Eastman School, yeah.
And
There's
the-
probably a few out there that I don't know
Yeah,
about
yeah.
because they're small and they don't end up on our radar.
Yeah, rental spaces.
Yeah, yeah. Do we have that place on the Heights still? Like right at the top of Bridge Gully Hill? Didn't we own property? It's like,
Oh, not Old Turnpike Road?
Yeah.
No, we sold that a while
okay,
ago.
yeah.
Yeah. But.
No, I just remember that.
Where Petco is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think down the road you do have some discussion around
Yeah.
Eastman Building
Yeah.
and what you want to do.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we can provide you with the data right now. we're renting it to the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
And Head Start.
Yeah,
Head
nice.
Start has 2 rooms there now, so that they have now 2 programs in Concord for that age group.
Oh, that's good to
Yeah,
know.
which was good.
Yeah.
They closed their facility in Warner and asked if they could come in with us. So Jack worked out a contract with Head Start.
Nice. All right.
They are paying rent.
So at our next board meeting, I guess we can look at scheduling. Do we have another capital facilities meeting
yeah,
on?
we have one.
November 2nd.
Yeah,
Okay.
right, the beginning of November.
Okay,
And that was important because we hope.
we'll have
we'll
news by
have
then,
more
right? Yeah, so that will be a
information
meeting
for-
around middle
for
school
you.
mostly.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's definitely gonna be.
So maybe we can have a
useful
second
project.
meeting sometime before the end of the year to look at this.
I'd like to do
again.
that before you jump into your budget season.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Okay.
So we can just look
That'd
at the
be good.
schedule. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Are we good? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move, so
Any
moved.
second?
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
6:30, wow, you did great.
All right, now I have to go to a meeting.
Thanks, man.
I have to go to,
Thank you,
not
Matt.
that
Great
kind of
job.
Thank you.
Put it in.
meeting. Go to CrossFit. to the coaches meeting.
Much ado.
No rest for me.
No rest, no worry.
It's bringing things.
It can vary. You could go over
Matt's
there,
air
be
conditioning.
cold too.